kick off. People can trickle
All
in
right.
and
Sounds good. All right. Well, good morning, almost afternoon, and happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to our June 19th meeting for LASHRM. Appreciate everyone's attendance. Before we begin with our speakers, we just want to go through and give a shout out to our new members. So we have 4 new members for this month: Jennifer Krisnowich, Jalen Millen, Autumn Raymer, and Brittany Gantenbein. So welcome to our new members. We are always happy to have people join our membership and get involved with LASHRM, and appreciate, if they're on today, appreciate their attendance. As always, we like to remind you of who is on the La Crosse Area Society of Human Resource Management Board, the LASHRM board. So here you can see all of the members, and we are always looking. We have a few open positions, so we are looking for people to get involved. So if you are just dying to get out there and get involved, please reach out to any one of the members that you see listed here. We like to thank our sponsors. So our 2024 chapter sponsors are the Insurance Center, Express Employment Professionals, Paylocity, the Alliance, and WCCU Credit Union. Their sponsorship allows us to do some of the great programming that we do throughout the year. And we are always looking, already, believe it or not, we're looking into 2025 for chapter sponsors for 2025 so that we can continue on with the great programming that we are able to provide each and every month. In terms of areas of recognition or how to become a sponsor, we have the recognition category, safety and compliance, executive coaching and development, legislative, HR strategy, and education. So if you are currently an HR professional or a leader within one of these types of organizations, please take a look at that, take a photo of that QR code, and you can find out how to become a chapter sponsor. Something to mark your calendars for. We do take a little bit of a break in both July and August, but we are going to kick off the fall programming in September. On September 16th, this is our second annual nonprofit vendor fair. Last year was such a great success, and we had a lot of positive feedback that we're going to make it happen again for this year. It starts at 4:30 and it runs until 7 o'clock on the 16th of September, and it is located at the Radisson Hotel Ballroom. So that's on Harborview Plaza. You can find additional information on our website, but we encourage everyone to attend. And we also have some ways that you can either sponsor or be part of the vendor fair. So if you're interested in becoming part of our vendor fair, please reach out to info@LASHRM or visit our website. And then, as you can see, there's different ways to help to sponsor this event, whether that be with food or refreshments or silent auction. As I mentioned, last year was such a great turnout. Everyone that attended, as you're able to attend from 4:30 to 7, just come when you're able to. A lot of great networking and sharing of the resources that are available in our area that you might not know as a leader of your organization. So really a great way to find out who is in our area, whether it be for mental health and wellness or recruitment, those types of things. So make plans to attend our vendor fair on September 16th. In the remainder of 2024, we have programming that will take place in both November and December. The reason you don't see an October date on there is because that is when WSHRM, or Wisconsin State SHRM, has its annual breakout sessions, annual conference, which will be held in the Dells again this year. So that's something you want to keep in mind. And we don't do programming then to allow people to sign up for Wisconsin SHRM and attend that 3-day event in Wisconsin Dells. But otherwise, go out to our website to check on additional programming and to get registered for the programming. We want to thank everyone that joined our Member Appreciation Night. The rain held off and we were able to enjoy the Loggers game and some brats and great food and conversation for a few hours. So thank you to everyone who came out and enjoyed that evening, and mark your calendars for next year because you don't know what we have in the works. As I mentioned, the Wisconsin SHRM is in October 9th through the 11th. And next week already is the annual conference, which we are fortunate enough that it's just going to be taking place in Chicago. So it's very nearby as opposed to previous years. We have a few members of our board who are going to be heading to Chicago to attend the conference. Lots of great speakers, and there are ways to attend virtually as well. If you're not able to escape a few days of work and attend the conference, maybe you want to consider doing the virtual registration and listening in on some of the great speakers. So lots of great things happening, not only locally, but then also across the nation. So another thing I want to remind you of, and this is also a registration opportunity, if you are attending the Wisconsin State SHRM Conference in the Dells, again, remember September 9th through, or October 9th through the 11th, we will be getting together with our lacrosse group for dinner. So if you are going to be attending, whether you are a member of SHRM or not, we would love to have you join us for dinner on the 9th from 7:30 to 9. We're going to be meeting at the Lake City Social again for great food, great conversation, a few drinks, just a way to connect while we're out of our hometown and just network and connect during the conference. So register for that so we know who to expect that evening. I will allow an opportunity for anyone who has any other announcements that they want to share, or if there's any questions they want to ask about programming. So just open it up for a few seconds here. Please remember, if you do have questions, to unmute yourself so that we can make sure to address any questions or share announcements. All right. Hearing none, we are going to move on to our programming, and I'm going to turn it over to Emily to introduce our speakers today.
Thank you. And I'm very excited to have them joining us. As a neurodivergent person, I think it's important to continue the conversation. So I got to see them speak at the LASHRM last year. So a little bit about our speakers. Denise Shamans is the executive director and co-founder of the nonprofit organization Good Friend Inc. in Waukesha County, Wisconsin. And that's devoted to autism awareness, acceptance, and empathy. Her inspiration comes from her 3 young adult children whose journey has taught more than 65,000 people how to better understand autistic neurology. And then Shelley Dretzka is the mother of 2 young men, one a neurotypical college junior and the other a neurodivergent HR admin/recruiter on the Arrow team. With her decades of HR experience, she founded Arrow Consulting in the middle of COVID, and her style is personal, approach is upbeat, and objective is always the same: to be an HR business partner who has a seamless extension of her client's team. So I'll hand it over to you both.
Thank you. All right, everybody, I'm going to share my screen. I'm assuming everyone can see it okay.
We can, thank you.
Awesome. All right. So to get started, yes, I'm Denise Shamans, executive director. I have co-founded Good Friend Inc. with my co-founding partner, Chelsea Booty, who has retired. And we started it because of our children. I have, well, actually, I'm going to just wait there and I'll show you my family in a minute. But Shelley, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, same thing. I appreciate you guys having us. Emily, I'm glad you got to see Chelsea and I in the Dells last October. So this is great. We're excited to be here. And again, we'll kind of, a great introduction, but it's really about our family, which is that next slide. So.
That's right. All right, so here's my family. I'll jump in. Sam and Anna and Jacob. Jacob is my oldest, 27-year-old. Jacob is ADHD, anxiety, depression diagnosed. Sam is autistic and ADHD, and Anna has newly diagnosed ADHD. So that is my family with my husband, Mike.
And then my family, Joshua is 24 years old. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 7 years old, and he graduated from Whitewater last year and is now on my team. Cole has anxiety and depression, which he gets from his mommy. So I have that too. So thanks to genetics. And my husband keeps us all together. So it's my husband, Ken. So, and I, just so you guys know, my relationship with Good Friend goes way back. We are one of the originals. Chelsea and Denise's first classroom was in 2007 when that big, tall giant there in that picture was just 7 years old. And so we got to be the first classroom. So Denise and Chelsea and I have been friends and collaborators since then.
Yeah. A lot of connection, lot of crossover there. So Good Friend was started in 2007. We started in school and community. So what we do is we create films and a curriculum to educate everyone else around that neurodivergent student. And so what we do is all strength-based, is really helping people understand maybe some walk in your shoes kind of exercises, really using neurodivergent stories, very personal stories as well as our own, to help people connect better. So as our children have grown, Good Friend has grown, and we've moved into middle school space, and now we've actually moved into the employment space. So we're going to show you some things coming up from our employment training that we have. But really what's most important is this ROI. So understanding that hiring people with disabilities has some challenges. We also know that they bring a lot of value, and here that is. Next, we're going to get into the learning objectives. So our first learning objective is really understanding what neurodivergence is and that neurodiversity paradigm. So really understanding all of that language surrounding it, and so that you're better able to understand it and talk and speak to it as well. Our second learning objective is you, Shelley.
So really how to improve our diverse culture without adding more to that HR does. So obviously I'm in the HR space, been doing that for decades. I understand we have a lot of stuff we need to focus on and make sure we're compliant. So again, just getting some additional tools, maybe things that you're already doing to make sure that we are compliant in our day-to-day HR role. And then the third one is mine as well. So in HR, we all love great resources and best practices. So we're going to have a few of those today, and a couple surprises for you along the way that will be shared with you guys after. Again, we all talk about that attraction, retention, and engagement, right? That's kind of our daily struggle and how best to do that. And really how we can manage your existing practices in that talent life cycle. It's really easier than you think. A couple little modifications, a couple little new things here or there will help you really attract, retain, and engage the neurodiverse, but really the general population as well.
All right, let's dive in, shall we? So what is neurodiversity? Neurodiversity is really, neuro is your brain and diversity is differences. So brain differences. Being neurodivergent is actually diverging away from neurotypical. And so oftentimes we have this set of diagnoses. There are 100 different graphics about neurodiversity. So we took this is our Good Friend representation of neurodivergence and what we are associated with as an organization. There are many different kinds of neurodivergence, but it's really important to understand the intersectionality here. So it's very rare to meet someone who is just autistic. Oftentimes they are ADD, ADHD, bipolar. They may have just a whole chicken soup of diagnoses as well. And so, like I said, it's very rare to meet someone who is just autistic. And 40% of the population at large is neurodivergent. So we know people, if we're not neurodivergent, we know people that are neurodivergent. And so this is kind of the language surrounding that. It's a collection of neurotypes. The neuromajority, as I told you, is what we would call the neurotypical. And neurodivergent means that you just diverge from neurotypical. Some other terms that you may have heard, as I just said, was neurotypical and neurodivergence. Any questions so far on this neurodivergent paradigm? All right, we're going to keep going then. Next is Good Friend Inc.'s employment. As I said before, Neurodiversity at Work was just launched this April. It is a training for any employer, any size, any industry. It is a 37-minute documentary, and that documentary has 10 neurodivergent, successfully employed individuals that are all in different industries. And what we did was in the film was for you to get to know them, their diagnostic story, how their neurodivergence comes into play in their workplace. And then we have 5 training modules where we brought in subject matter experts and we did a deeper dive into 5 different areas. 3 of those areas are very HR related. And then the other 2, one is neurodiversity explained and autistic characteristics. So we're pretty proud of this program, and we're going to be showing you a couple of clips from that film as well. Well, here's our first one, Marita. So Marita talks about just the intersectionality. So I want you to just pay attention to her diagnoses.
My name is Marita Peterson. I am 32 and I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was diagnosed autistic. I have ADHD and bipolar, which is a great combination.
We love Marita. All right. So also we want to talk about within that neurodiversity and that whole graphic that we showed you, these conditions that are in the DSM-5 all carry strengths. So we just wanted to make sure that we gave you a really great graphic for you to understand all the great strengths, especially when it comes to the workplace with all of these conditions. Not all brains are wired the same, and they're all part of the human experience. So we want to appreciate every neurotype. All right, next is preferred language. We get a lot of questions about this. This is always changing, and I will tell you, when we learn better, we do better. And me as a parent with my son, who's 25 and autistic, we had a lot of changes in the way that we talked about his autism or his identity. And I will say that when he was young, he did identify as a person with autism. And then as he got older, he wanted to be considered an autistic person. And so understanding the language is really part of a success in a workplace. And don't be afraid to ask that person. It's okay to ask how they identify, because it shows, number one, that you respect their opinion, and number two, that you want to do the best that you can by asking them. So understanding and listening to them is probably the biggest takeaway amongst all of this. And I will say that probably about 87% of the autistic population prefers identity first language. Any questions so far?
And sometimes it's interchangeable. My Josh will say sometimes I have autism, or I am autistic. So sometimes it can be interchangeable as well.
Yes. And like I said, it's okay to ask. It's okay to be, questioning that and just doing the best that you can. All right. So I love the iceberg model. I love using the iceberg model. We use it a lot in school and community, and we use it to help people just wrap their head around everything, because oftentimes we're in the 10% mindset. We're in that top part. And as we know, that isn't even the worst of it, right? Or the most important part is what is below that surface of the water, that 90%. And so when we look at autism or neurodivergence, we look at oftentimes the 10% that observe behavior, and we make judgments on that. And so it's important to understand what drives that observed behavior. And oftentimes that takes a while. That takes getting to know that person or asking questions or being inquisitive. And these are all the things that drive that. All of these things are actually in the DSM-5. So if you are seeking a diagnosis of autism, you need to have different checkpoints in many of these areas. Sensory processing differences wasn't added until maybe 5 years ago. So they weren't even looking at sensory issues, which I found really interesting, because if you've met one person with autism, well, you've met one person with autism, but pretty much everyone has a sensory processing difference if they're autistic. So I find that really interesting. but we want to make sure that we're in that 90% and we're looking at all of these issues that might be driving that behavior. Anything to add, Shelley?
I think a good example here is if somebody doesn't have verbal capability, sometimes called nonverbal. I know sometimes we're getting away from that as well. And usually there's a judgment of intelligence. And we found some really amazing things as soon as we gave them tools where they can type to speak or they can use pics. And it's just amazing what's really going on in their head. They just didn't have the capacity to verbalize it. So I think that's a good example of the iceberg.
Yep, correct. So the next one, we're going to show you a little bit more, some of the lessons that we've learned from the iceberg model.
There's that one.
There it is. And now they're calling it non-speaking.
Non-speaking.
So say, and I can say that because my son is non-speaking. He can answer your questions. He can say yes or no, but he can't have a back and forth conversation with you. So he is non-speaking. And for the longest time, I did introduce him and tell people he was nonverbal, which is wrong. Because when you say someone's nonverbal, that means they don't have any capacity to answer you, whether that's through type to speak, augmented, devices, writing. The fact that he is actually verbal, it's just not through spoken language. So non-speaking is the terminology that we use there. Eye contact isn't necessary. We teach about the sensory differences that people have. Oftentimes when they have to look at you, they're not going to hear you. And so looking away, and in our film, we met many people that were autistic that couldn't make eye contact for them to be able to speak because it's very distracting. So there's a lot of things that come with eye contact. Back in the day, we used to do different things to try to get our kids to look at us. And now we realize that that's not conducive to success.
Physically, I recall in some of the therapies, we would physically take Josh's head and make him look at us. But again, we're learning and we're growing. I mean, that nonverbal versus non-speaking, that forcing them to have eye contact, that forcing them to have quiet hands when they're stimming.
Yes.
I mean, that's all things that we've learned along the way. And Denise and our families have obviously, we've lived it.
Yeah. And it's really, I mean, what else is really great is social media. Now the autistic population, and I love this, is now all over the place. If you're on Instagram or TikTok or even Facebook, they have an identity now. They have a voice and they're everywhere and they're sharing their experiences. And I think it's the best thing ever, because when my son was diagnosed 22 years ago, there was no one I could look to. Well, there was Temple Grandin. She's now in her 70s, or Stephen Shore, but we didn't have anyone. And I had to go to conferences to see an adult to kind of measure and see what was possible for my child. And so now social media has taken over and I love it. So it's great. Hidden curriculum. This is another important thing to just understand about the iceberg model is executive function is really difficult. Executive function is knowing all the steps to anything, a project, a recipe, even toilet training, all that kind of stuff is all executive function. And our autistic kids have a really hard time with that. And they have it throughout their whole life. So as adults, understanding hidden curriculum is all the things that we just kind of pick up on because we can notice it and we learn from it. But our autistic friends have a really difficult time with hidden curriculum, with understanding and picking up those things and learning from them. They have to be taught step by step by step. There's that executive function. So breaking down and completing tasks is very difficult. So making processes as predictable, clear, and consistent as possible is super important. And having the tools to do that, I think Shelley's going to talk a little bit more about that as we come up. All right, we've got a discussion here. So I'm going to have my host help me out. But with the iceberg model in mind, give an example of what happened when a colleague recognized a struggling employee might be on the spectrum. Have you had any experiences like that? And I'll go back to the iceberg model so you can see and reference. At least I'm going to try. Here we go. So you're welcome to speak up and share with us. This is your opportunity.
I will say for me personally, COVID really kicked it into gear because I was overbooking myself, so I didn't have any downtime and I was always go, 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 and I just didn't stop. And COVID forced me to stop and actually like take inventory of myself.
Right, right.
And then also working remote, it was a nice different shift. I could have the lighting how I needed to have it. I could step away when I needed to. I wasn't constantly in go mode, performance mode, public facing mode and masking. So really dropping the mask. It was a long year of digging through that, but it made a difference and that was a crazy time.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and coming off of that too, I think, if you see, your fellow colleagues, struggling, or you yourself were struggling coming out of COVID, and now you have all the social interaction that you didn't have before, right? Now we're all face to face again, or some of us may not be, but for the most part, getting back to being social again, there's a learning curve there. There's like a lot of grace we need to offer each other to be able to help them navigate that and get back up to speed.
Great. Anybody else want to share? If not, we will move on. One of the handouts that you will get after this is actually the benefits of a neurodiverse workplace. I just have it printed out in black and white, but it's a pretty colored one you'll get. The film that you're seeing clips of, and then the modules have so many of these great handouts or templates or resources for you. So that's one that you're going to get. It's benefits of a neurodiverse workplace, like higher employee retention rates, different unique perspectives, creativity, higher productivity, all of those really great things. So just kind of Denise pointed to the fact 40% of the population is neurodiverse. So if you go around your offices right now, you've got some folks that there's some great benefits if you start following kind of this next section where we get into more of the human resources. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with the 7 principles of universal design. It's kind of something that I had done in my professional life.
Right.
Oops, you skipped ahead.
Right.
In my professional life, I just didn't know what it was called. I'm like, hey, I've done this. I just didn't know it actually had a name. So really, it's the process of designing something to be as functional as possible for as many people as possible. Okay, you don't need to do, we're going to have 7 examples here. There'll be some definitions. I'll give you some examples. You don't have to do all 7. You kind of pick and choose what works for you. Try something. What works for one person may not work for another. I always use the example here when Joshua was a kiddo, and I'd go to those same conferences Denise would, and we'd get all this great information of what could work for those in the autism population. And I'd go back to the teachers, and these teachers were already overwhelmed with 25 other kiddos, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're asking me to do something different, just for Josh. And Josh had amazing teachers, but what I taught them was, no, this thing that I'm teaching you, this skill, do it for the entire classroom. I'm not asking for something different for Joshua. I'm saying apply this to your entire classroom, and you're going to see great behaviors and stuff from Josh, but also everyone else. Really, same principle is here. We're just bringing it to the workplace. So again, you can check these out. There's a link in here as well. You can ease your way into the universal design. Again, these are principles that are largely consistent with consideration for physical differences, but they are easily adaptable to include neurodivergent as well. So as you can see, I'll give you an example. So number 2, flexible in use. Give that flexible workspace. I think it was Emily who had maybe said during COVID, right? She was out of the office. She could get up, she could walk around. Some people want to sit at a desk. Some people want to stand. Some prefer a conference room. Sometimes it's a lighting issue. Standing, sitting, walking. I think in one of our examples you'll hear today too, a Zoom meeting, cameras off and letting them walk. I know some people are so like cameras on. Okay. maybe that's an accommodation that we can give. 3, that simple and intuitive use. So just processes, having them clearly spelled out and having those steps in order of execution. Denise had referred to that in that last slide. Number 4, an example there is minimal noise levels, allowing for earbuds, noise canceling headphones, stepping away, going and maybe working in a conference room versus being kind of in that cubicle jungle. So that's the first ones. And then we go on to the next slide. Couple more examples here. So number 5, again, providing those clear expectations, continuous feedback and opportunities for improvement. This is the one where it always reminds me, all of these things, again, are things we're doing for all of our employees, or we should be, right? These are all best practices. Number 6 is really considering the neurological effort it takes for individuals. To Denise's point, that eye contact, that's a lot of effort to engage you visually, plus listen to what you're saying, plus then have the output, in the spoken word. So I think it was Emily who had used the word masking. Okay, so that's a problem for those neurodivergents really trying to make themselves fit in. So they're kind of faking it to make it. That's really what the masking is. So that's why sometimes you won't know who's neurodiverse until they self-disclose to you. And number 7, again, that space, sometimes being seated in a cubicle isn't going to work for that. I love this word, but it takes me a while to say it's kinesthetic thinker. Okay. So that means that's somebody who's got to like move around, as you can kind of tell. Like I'm moving, I'm up. I like to be on calls. I like walking meetings. Like I'm a kinesthetic thinker. So, but now take somebody who is and kind of chain them to their desk. Probably not going to be the best for them. So those are just some definitions of the principles of universal design, as well as some examples. And again, another resource. Again, I love resources. Some people love reading. Some like YouTube videos. It's all out there. But if you want to check this out, here's this quote by Marcel Chiampi from #ActuallyAutistic. The point of this article, so if you guys go out and you look at this and you read this quote, is universal design is intentional. This isn't happening by accident. It isn't just going to, magically appear one day. You really do need to be intentional about this. So that's really what this slide is about. Then we get into HR alphabet soup. We all love the stuff, right? That we have to do on our daily basis. What's on those checklists, especially compliance when it comes to ADA. Again, with any other hire, putting the right person in the right position should not add to your HR plate. I don't want people to become overwhelmed with any ADA considerations or accommodations when hiring the neurodivergent. So again, you guys are familiar with Title I, you're familiar with ADA. It does include autism is really what the point here is, as well as other neurodiverse diagnoses. So again, it's on the plate, it's there. I just don't want people to be overwhelmed or think it's more work to consider getting them into your workforce. So I love this slide. First of all, it's a pretty up-to-date statistic. Sometimes we don't get this up to date. Contrary to everything else that's going on in our economy now, this expense was nearly cut in half. So half of your workplace accommodations made for disabilities can be implemented at no cost. We can all take those to our bosses, right? This is going to cost us nothing. Maybe a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of research, right? And do that thing. But really, the most you're going to see is like a $300 accommodation. So there you go. So if somebody's talking about we can't do this because of budget, pull out this slide. And again, some really easy, reasonable accommodations that we can do here. I mentioned the noise canceling headphones or earbuds, alternative lighting. I'll tell you, I know I learned from Josh, I actually have some of the issues as well. Fluorescent lighting. First of all, it's not the best for the workplace, but I will tell you, it makes noise. And if you have sensory issues, you can hear there's buzzing, there's things going on. So maybe there's some alternative lighting that they can do. Modifying your workspace. And again, this really all points back to that universal design, letting people work in a less busy area, letting them maybe have control over their temperature, closing some vents. Maybe sometimes a cold breeze is a sensory thing that's really gonna have them dysregulate. It really comes down to ask your employee what they need, right? Some people may not be forthcoming with it, but here's the thing. I'm a proponent of ask every employee. Ask every employee what they need. I always say, just like I would always say to my kids, there's 3 answers: yes, no, and not no. Okay. So have that conversation, do what you can, especially if you start seeing that dysregulation or performance issues. Give them the options. Sometimes that's where you'll start seeing some red flags. Let's not just jump to it's a will thing. It could just be, we got to give them a couple other things. What we have another handout, bonus number 2, like we have a little ding, ding, ding. Bonus number 2 you're going to get from the film is common accommodations for the neurodivergent workers. They're divided in sensory, flexibility, structure, and support. So you guys will get, the blur doesn't let me do that, but here you go. You guys are going to get this one as well. All right. Actually, I want to pause there. First of all, I'm going to take a breath. As you can tell, I talk fast and loud. Get a little water there. Any questions before we start going into some really great stuff, best practices? All right. I'm going to go ahead. So beginning with this slide and through the rest of the session, you're going to get best practices in each of the areas that we talked about in learning objective 3. And then we're going to give you a slide of resources. Okay, so let's start here with attraction and recruitment. So job postings and interviews. So we gave some examples there of job postings. I want to talk about interviews. Interviews really can be the biggest barrier for neurodivergence. Consider offering alternative interview options. Maybe Zoom with the video off. I always remind myself, and I'm sure I'm going to say this, and a lot of you are going to hear yourself saying this to hiring managers in your past. We're not hiring a professional interviewee. We're hiring for skills, or we're hiring for the job. So it's really thinking about that. And again, if you guys get it, it's now training your hiring managers and all the bosses as well. You're sitting in this meeting because you get it and you want some best practices. These really become your tools to take to your hiring managers as well. So that's something to think about as well. The other thing you can do is provide the questions ahead of time. Give them time to prepare. Give them time to think about it. Some people I've heard that, well, that's like cheating. Why? They're going to come with their answers. I don't know why that would be considered cheating, but give them some time to prepare. You really want them to show up their best selves. So that's what you want to see, so you can make a determination if you will hire them or not. What does the job description say about the position, right? So this is the posting when they're looking at it. If it's a requirement to be on your feet and in a noisy environment, tell them that in the job posting. Provide a taste of that during the interview. Take them to the cubicle, take them to the floor, take them to the warehouse. Let them see what that is, because then they get to feel it, and then they can self-select out as well, or maybe ask for that accommodation. If there's no face-to-face communications required for the position, that's where I really talk about, emailing the questions ahead of time. Light manufacturing job, maybe it's something with some manipulatives. Do that. Actually give them that availability to show you that they can do it. I got another handout for this one. Employee engagement questions. So again, these are always great too. So you guys will get this. They're universally designed questions around accommodations. What do you need to feel supported? Work style. How can I best partner with you on this task? Communication. How do you prefer to receive information? All really great questions. Again, universally designed. I'm not saying to use these only for neurodivergent. You may not even know they're sitting across from you. Use these for everybody. So there's our best practices for attraction and recruitment.
All right, we have another little film. This is Eric. He works for Rockwell Automation. He is a engineer, a full stack engineer. And so he talks a little bit about the interview process.
the complications regarding the interview process, because that historically is the biggest reason why people with autism are unemployed or underemployed. They do not get past the interview. Companies do not realize that the individuals reacting in the way they do to unfamiliar situations are simply doing it because they don't know what the proper way to react is, because they have to learn these things. Companies that are cognizant of that are much more likely to succeed.
So here's what's great. I can talk about this all day long with you guys and tell you as an ally of my son who's autistic, or myself with my battles with, anxiety and depression. But to hear it from these voices is what makes this film the most powerful. Here's another thing: assessments. Whatever assessments you guys are using DISC, CI, PI, BASI, any of those things. Again, just making sure they're tied to your core competencies, giving them the accommodations, and really giving them that realistic job preview is what this slide is about. If the candidate can see themselves and representation in your company, they're more likely to accept that job offer.
Nice.
All right. Some more best practices. So, some of these things you're going to see, and I would be curious if we're in a room. This makes it way better because I'd have people raise hands and stuff like that. So just kind of in your own mind, as we're talking about these best practices, I want to know if you're currently practicing this, right? Despite maybe you're not targeting the neurodiverse population yet, but maybe you're doing these things. So a couple little tweaks and you could be targeting the neurodiverse. Again, these practices are also attractive to the non-neurodiverse and their allies, people who know those, have them in their family. Again, 40%, right? We probably are or know somebody. And so just considering how many people are affected by neurodiversity. So this inclusive environment, the values, the respecting neurodiversity. Maybe you have a web page that kind of shows that. Educating your team members on understanding and empathy. And then again, encouraging that open communication and providing a safe space for that, so that people, if they haven't been forthright with it, they're comfortable and can come forward. They can disclose their needs, their concerns, their needs for accommodations. So it's really what that slide is about.
All right, so we're going to move into another clip. This is Brian. Brian works for BMO. He's IT, and his example of success in a universally designed workplace, I think, is really great. But it's also important to understand that Brian wasn't diagnosed autistic until 3 years ago. So his experience with disclosure, self-advocacy was like growing in the last 3 years. And he said that because he was in a universally designed workplace, that he was able to succeed even before his diagnoses. So it's kind of cool to think about that.
I still don't tell people in my personal life as much. I do in my work life because it's where I spend a good portion of my time. I'm sort of a person I keep to myself. It's important for me for people to know that this is what somebody who has autism is like, right? Also for advocating for myself at work, because sometimes I don't react perfectly in a meeting or something like that. So when I've disclosed to somebody, they have been understanding, helpful, wanting to know what they can do to help me. But like lately, I've just been telling everybody. So it's in 3 years, it's gone from like hiding it or being ashamed of it maybe to just being like, this is who I am.
All right, Shelley, next one is you.
They finally have these sensory sensitivities, which does sound a little ridiculous. It's like one of the first things you realize with your kiddo when you start questioning, what's going on here. So again, universally designed, you can do this. You're reducing excessive noise, those bright lights, those fluorescent lights, offering the noise canceling headphones, allowing them to do that in their workspace. Maybe sometimes giving them flexible work arrangements. Maybe some days it's better to work from home than it is, from the office. So again, some best practices there.
All right. Now there is Sergey. Sergey works for Manpower in marketing and communications. And sorry about the cat. He works in a flexible workplace, and he was also late diagnosed.
I would have to switch up my desk like all the time. You know, I had my cube, but I would go to the second floor and find another cube to sit in. I would have to go find something where I can stand up. Now that they have stand-up desks in the office, it's so nice. But now that I've been here for a while, and I think my coworkers know that this is how I do things, this is how I work. They're able to see that I still get things done and still productive. But it did take a little bit of getting comfortable with that.
Again, I love that you get to hear it from their voices, not just Denise and I telling you that. All right, here comes some resources. Hopefully you guys are familiar with DVR. Great program. They actually offer a work experience. So for up to 12 weeks, the job developer, DVR, is actually the employer of record. So you guys aren't even the employer. They're the employer, and the wages are funded through DVR. If after 10 weeks, the candidate can perform the essential job duties independently, the company can actually make an offer. So it's kind of a, kind of attempt to hire is kind of what, what we would call it in the HR world. But again, you're not the employer of record, and they're paying for those first, 12 weeks or 10 weeks. It's an at-will arrangement.
Oh, Shelley, can I give an example of that? Because my
son is
DVR. So when Sam first started his work experiences, those 12-week work experiences, he had probably 4 different industries that he tried. But the last one that he tried, it stuck, and they offered him a position after his 12 weeks. So he works part-time for an environmental engineer, and he takes their field reports and then transcribes them into their computer database. So he is a product of this whole DVR situation, and it worked out really well for him. I wish every kid had that opportunity to try an industry, right, for a while before they actually looked at a job. So I love the way it's done, and his coaches were amazing, and they took a lot of what an employer worries about off of the table by having a coach there to navigate everything and help train them. So it really is a great opportunity.
Yeah, and it still remains an at-will arrangement for both parties. So if it's not a good fit, the candidate can move or can also be dismissed. I know one of our film candidates, he's been with the company for a long time. He's an adult. He still has job coaches, which are great. I mean, they came and supported him at the film preview and stuff like that. So being able to have job coaches is really cool too. It's just another external resource to help them be successful. So again, these are some great resources for you. So check those out. The links will be in the presentation that gets shared with you. And then talking about retention and culture, just embracing diverse work styles. Everyone really needs a mix of things. Usually people don't just like one way, right? I always think of this like when you're doing training, right? Planning for training for your adult learners or for your employees, understanding the differences. Some like to read, some like to actually do, some want to observe. So kind of offering the mix of that, giving them some collaborative while they also get some individual work. So some of this, I'm hoping you guys are seeing these best practices and like, well, we already do that. We weren't thinking about neurodiverse, but we do that stuff already. So if you're in that best practice category, that's really what I'm trying to show here.
All right, we're going to meet Marita again. She's going to tell you about turtle time, which I think is really, well, it'll speak for itself.
I'm a deep thinker. I get in there. I am focused. It's like this house of cards that I've constructed, and the spider web is not done being like made. So when you interrupt me, it all falls down. I have to start over, which makes work sometimes very difficult. So I have this system I've developed called Turtle Time, where I have this little toy turtle thing that I put on top of my monitor at work that just alerts people, like, do not talk to me. I am busy focusing on something that I cannot be interrupted. I have a little sign that goes up that says, do not speak to me unless the office looks like this, and it's a bunch of flames. Then I have my noise canceling earbuds in that I listen to my music, and just like, I have it on my calendar in red, Turtle Time.
I also love her spider web thinking too. That's a great analogy.
Which is a great visual.
Yeah.
All right, let's give you some resources for retention and culture. So natural supports, when we talk about those, sometimes that's ride sharing, right? Maybe they can't drive. So we're getting them some transportation to and from work. That mentoring, internal coaches, maybe those external coaches, working with family and guardians, maybe for some communication. So Denise, I'm assuming when Sam was working those things, they had an open door communication with you so that you could support him at home and help them help Sam be successful in his job.
Absolutely,
So including the family.
Yeah, the coaches were that they were the communication piece. So that was great.
Yeah. Check out Earn. So another really great resource. They have a neurodiversity in the workplace toolkit. It's really about building awareness and a supportive culture. And then technology, I love to point back to Marita's. We always laugh about that all the time. I love that. Her putting that on her group calendar, using that technology besides that little piece of paper. So when people walk up to her, I'll tell you, I think some people that saw that film started implementing Cholo Time after seeing that. So I love that tool.
It's a simple concept.
It is. I love it. All right, engagement. Let's talk best practices. So again, offering that support and the accommodations, engaging in that collaboration. I go back to, do you want to know what your employees want? Ask them, right? It's pretty simple. So having those conversations, again, many companies are already offering the mentoring or the coaching programs. Those are built in depending on your organization. The other thing I like to consider is possibly partnering with someone who already has the understanding of the neurodivergent experience. Someone who has someone in their family, somebody who has worked with someone in the past. They just have different insights and they're a couple steps ahead as other people are starting to learn, and really engaging them and having them be collaborative with your employee, again, has those built-in supports. And just open your eyes to some other options that might be out there. And then that's the neurodivergent employee then sees that, as a positive, and then they feel engaged and really part of the workforce.
So we'll give you an example of Ryan. He's one of those that has camera off, and he'll tell you why.
Zoom is huge for me because I can turn my camera off and I can walk around and pace. Even when I was in an office setting, I would get the wireless headset so I could be 30 feet from my desk and kind of walk around and still be able to hear while I was in my meetings, because that was just a way for me to concentrate.
Great. Performance management. We all love talking about performance management, right? So really fostering that strengths-based approach. Some of you may already be doing that. I mean, there's a whole book, on there out there about strengths. But using that in development, having those one-on-one conversations, really finding out where that strength is, where their passions lie, what they want to do, right? Do they want to be collaborative? Do they want to be individual? And putting them into those situations to be successful. An example, and it may be in the film, but a neurodivergent maybe has a skill for being creative and doing presentations. Maybe it's not in their job descriptions, maybe it's not in their essential duties, but that's where their passions lie, and they can bring some value with that, and just giving them, tagging them in on that for the next meeting, and giving them, again, that opportunity to succeed and to use their skills. This is the last ding little bonus we'll be getting to. This is managing performance. That's a handout that comes in the film. It's employees succeed when goals and expectations are clear, deadlines are established, success is defined. Does any of this sound new to you? No. If you're a good HR person, you guys are doing these things. We do talk about, many neurodivergent people do prefer written communication they can refer back to, having that email to look back to. Talking about don't wait until the annual performance review to communicate feedback. Using real-time feedback avoids surprises, those type of things. So that is all on there as well in the performance management handout. Couple other things on communication. Again, using that clear and concise language, giving those written instructions, keeping in mind the executive function. That's one of the things I learned very early on with Josh's diagnosis. You know, we tell kids, go in your room, pick this up, bring out your laundry, then load the dishwasher. It's all gone. So like saying, you know, go in your room and bring me the cups. That was it. And then when that task was done, then we moved on to the next. So just thinking about breaking it into smaller manageable steps, having that in writing, something that someone can follow. Again, if you provide that for everybody, some people will use it and some people won't. So again, setting clear expectations and offering really that positive reinforcement. I love that. So not waiting until the annual review to give feedback. I know managers sometimes like to do that, especially if it's negative, right? And then again, that offering positive reinforcement. I always think about this because it happened to me in my life where a hiring manager in the middle of a lunch, you know, stood up and was like giving this positive public praise to this individual who then just shrank, and that was not where they wanted it. They just wanted the quiet attaboy. So just understanding really what your individuals need, the way they like to receive their positive reinforcement is pretty important too.
All right, so we're going to share Brian. Brian, I think needs to share this with everyone about what his proper or what his acceptable way of communicating is.
Especially when I have issues, I really do need to have communication in writing. It's helped me a great deal over time because I listen to people and I remember what they say. I process it better when I can read it. When it's written, I have the time to take it in, read it. I problem solve. I fix problems all day. And if somebody just calls me and doesn't give me any facts, I find that really irritating first. And it's very difficult for me to give you help if I don't have any facts to deal with.
Factual. Love it.
Yeah. All right. We're back to EARN again. So here's another resource for the engagement. And I'll point back to that handout that we gave you. We do have the benefits of a neurodiverse workplace. It really does talk about having people engaged is wonderful. And again, having a diverse, you know, perspective, right? If people are challenged, if processes are challenged, it really leads to an overall improvement of the organization. Woo!
Right? We gave you a lot.
All right. Actually, well, I have one more. I have one more point here that I must have forgotten, or maybe we talk about that later.
Sorry, do you want me to go back?
Nope, we're good. Go ahead. Let's move on to this one. I'm a
right.
little out of sorts on that one. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. So everyone, it's now your opportunity to kind of, digest what we gave you through a fire hose. And actually, if there's any of these that you can speak to, or let's have a little discussion around this. What have you learned? What have you taken away? What are you already doing? Let's hear successes too. Has anyone tried alternative interview practices during your recruitment? Has anyone have any examples to share?
We have started sending out interview questions before the interview.
Nice. Love it. And how has that been?
Very good. People are more prepared for the interview. They're more comfortable during the interview.
Yes.
Love it.
Excellent. Anyone else? Anyone see some different ways of sharing their skills and their competency besides them telling you?
I think it's a little different for us because we're in the tech space. So we work with recruiters who aren't going to, follow other things because they tend to be very different personalities, very aggressive, very forward, very out there. As someone who was raised by a recruiter. So it can be a little difficult, but we are kind of reevaluating and we try and have a consistent recruitment process. We're very transparent about the interview process. We do 2 rounds unless there's a need for a third. And we try and have consistent questions and give the recruiters as much information as we can about what we're looking for and about the job. We also, in our first interview, is really giving a lot of information about the company and general stuff rather than talking about the job specifically and talking about work environments because we're a fully remote company. So just giving that broad overview to set the stage to give them the best chance of success has worked really well for us.
That's great.
I love that.
Having been in your shoes and in your desk, I know the challenge sometimes comes with hiring managers, right? Like I said before, you guys get this, you get the benefit of it. What do you think you kind of have as a takeaway in these different stages of the life cycle that you maybe we gave you some tools? What are those discussions going to look like differently with hiring managers moving forward? Something, anything? Think on it. It's okay.
Okay, I'll put something else out there as far as performance management. So when we were filming Neurodiversity at Work, it was overwhelming the amount, everybody pretty much had something to say about performance management and reviews. And they all had to say, I need a regular check-in. I need regular encouragement. I need regular, rather than waiting 6 months to a year. They realize that that's important to do that as well, to check those boxes. But how are you guys trying to do that more often? What do you think that landscape looks like as far as performance management, and how often? That's fair. All right.
All right. So there's things to think on. Again, we gave you a lot of stuff, like she said, by fire hose. So hopefully at least things are starting to turn. You're seeing value. The silence isn't, I don't care about this. I don't get it. I hope it's, we've got a lot to think about, and thank you for the tools that we can now go and hit our supervisors and hiring managers with. Awesome. Let's jump on to the next one then, Denise. We are, again, promoting, social inclusion, really encouraging those team building activities. Also remembering not all activities you do are accessible or appropriate for your neurodivergent. I always think about the after work happy hour. If that's a social thing and that brings anxiety to individuals who are neurodivergent, let's not hold that against them. Okay. But then don't just do happy hours after work. Like, try to do some different things so that they can be included on the social side of things. Ask their opinion. What do they like to do? Again, asking everybody what they like will give them that social inclusion. Really implementing that diversity and inclusion training to promote acceptance and reduce stigma. I think about the whole first part of this presentation where Denise really dove into that. That's very second nature to her and I. But when we start having the conversations, we realize there's a lot of education that needs to happen around that. There's a lot of assumptions and stereotypes. Even after last year in October, when we were at the Wisconsin LASHRM, and I came across somebody outside of the conference. She had attended it. I asked what she saw. I told her I was a presenter, and I told her about hiring the neurodivergent. And I won't repeat what she said, but it was almost like it hurt my heart to think why she couldn't hire the neurodivergent. There was just some uneducation there. Not to be judgy, but I can be judgy, but I felt that way in that moment, especially because my son was standing right next to me. And I'm like, by the way, here's my son. He's on the spectrum and he works for me in HR and does recruiting. And I wanted to kind of blow her mind and open that up. I think she had a very limited view on what the neurodivergent could actually do. So I think there's some education and some awareness that we can do there as well. Really, when planning activities, use an advisory group for ideas. Run them past your neurodivergent employees to make sure it's something they feel they can participate freely in. If it can't be universally designed, understand they may not be there, and then just give them some options. But really creating a sense of belonging is kind of why you should be doing these social inclusion things anyways. So there you go. There's that. And then we get to hear from Lisa.
Lisa, I'll let her I don't even need to set it up.
So when you're putting together strong teams, you need to think about the diversity that you're bringing in. You can't have a team that is built of 12 people with the exact same skills, because there's going to be a lot of gaps there. Genius comes from the collective. And I loved that quote, because it takes a lot of different types of people, a lot of different perspectives to really bring together something that can be genius and great. And it allows people to bring their whole selves to work. If we're not doing that, then people are going to continue masking. People are going to continue feeling like they have to be somebody different at work than they are personally. It is at the core of belonging to let people be themselves at work.
Can't argue any of that.
We couldn't have scripted that any better, because
No.
it's not scripted. None of that was scripted.
Right.
Denise's questions were scripted, but what they gave us was all from the heart. I noticed a couple of things in the chat. You're welcome for the specific examples. I'm glad you guys are digesting this. Lori Olson says they offer a neuro spicy coffee as an affinity group for neurodivergent coworkers to connect.
Love,
Yay.
love, love, love.
Love it, Lori. So let's talk about those advocates and allies, tapping into those lived experiences, giving them that safe, non-judgmental space. Again, I love the show of hands, but we can't do that here. But I always say, like, how many of you currently have an ERG or a BRG? And then I'd really want to know, like, how many of them are disability related. So if you have a disability related ERG or BRG, drop your name in the chat, because everybody else, I'm signing you up if you raise your hand for that. That's your person you go to. They're already doing it. See what their best practices are. See what they've tried and didn't work. So Lori Olson obviously has something, neuro spicy coffee. Love it. Just things to consider. And again, not everyone in the group has to be neurodivergent. It can also be, the allies and people who support that going forward. So just make sure you connect with these people, or be the first in your company that brings that forward.
And I will tell you, so thank you, Lori, for that coffee situation, because meeting all of our film candidates, it's difficult for them to find their tribe. It's difficult for them to find like-minded coworkers. And oftentimes they're just in their own little bubble, and they don't realize that whether they disclosed or not, that there are other people that they work with that they can align themselves with and have some rich discussions. And they want that. They just don't know how to do that. And if no one's organizing it, that's not in their natural wheelhouse to formulate and do it themselves. And so it's great if you just put something together and see who shows up, right? That's always a great alternative too. Good work.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna we got 2 minutes here, right, Denise?
Okay.
We're gonna wrap her up.
Yeah. So here's our course. So we gave you the 4 resources that we gave you are all embedded in these 5 modules that we have online. It's an online course. You sign up as a user, or you have multiple users. If it's a larger company, we work out a price plan with you. But the training is the full film, 37 minutes long. And then each of these courses or of these modules is about a half hour, but it is full of resources and really great information. It's all video based, so it's not just reading PDFs. It's a video timeline with resources embedded. And so that all can be found on our website. So we're just gonna.
Yep, and as we've said, we let people speak for themselves here. So let's have Becky take this on for us.
Let's celebrate differences over conformity, because that's where creativity happens. That's where that is the beauty of the human experience, I think, is when we have different minds in a room and we get to see the perspectives that each one brings. It brings a vibrancy to life that wouldn't exist if everyone was the same, following the same rules, dressing in the same way, communicating and speaking, or not speaking, as it were. So I think it's also important, again, to always presume competency with people. If we can just make a little space for each other, and take time to get to know people who are different from you. Listen to people who are different from you and believe them.
Becky. Awesome. Well, we are out of time. We did have a talk back slide you guys can take. Please feel free to check out the website, check out the film trailers and the module trailers. Those are on YouTube. Check it out. Anything very film specific or module specific, please reach out to Denise. Any of your talk back.
We've known for a long.
Oops, of the screen that we have. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm one of you. I'm one of you. HR folks, I work with my clients every day with this stuff. So again, there's our contact information. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. What we really would love to hear is if you guys are doing this stuff or you go and you start something new. Like we want to start hearing these success stories because then we can share that with others. So on behalf of Denise and I, thank you so much for your time today. We hope to hear from you. We hope you got some value and a lot of stuff to think about and at least, one or two key takeaways that could make your life better hiring the neurodiverse.
Perfect. And then we do have a book giveaway. So we'll just do that really quick here. So we are giving away the Neurodiversity Edge.
Yay.
Let's see.
Okay, cool.
Whitney. Perfect.
Nice.
All right. So Whitney will be in contact with the prize to see how you'd like to receive that. We'll be sending it from Amazon. So thank you everybody for attending so much. And then the handouts will be sent in the follow-up email.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.